What is up, everyone? This is a very special live episode of Nerds Win a Movie Podcast, and I'm going to be introducing my good friend who has a Kickstarter out for his new comic that I cannot wait to read. He's been a guest on this podcast so many times, and we've been talking about this book for 2 years now. So to see it at this point, we'll talk more about it in a second, but to see it at this point, it's just absolutely amazing. So without further ado, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Not even cancer can stop his comic from coming out. I'm a little crazy, you know this.
I do.
But man, it's good to see you, especially with everything that's been going on, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know it's big time for you. I mean, this Kickstarter campaign. I know it's been a lot, as I said, a long time in the making. 2 years we've been talking about this book, and I've been excited for it since then. So why don't since before we start on your book, it is May the 4th.
It is May the
4th. We literally were almost just late to starting this because we started talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
But real quick, I mean, what is your favorite Star Wars property? Not movie, property. I mean, it could be a movie, but I'm just saying, like.
Well, I mean, so you're gonna give me everything.
Yes, everything. Books.
Okay.
Extended universe, everything.
Does that make it more difficult?
It does, absolutely.
But no, because I don't think. I feel like we've probably talked about this before. That I'm somebody who's exceptionally loyal to what I fell in love with first, right? Like, look, the Beatles are a better band than Led Zeppelin, but Led Zeppelin came first for me, so they will always be my favorite. Okay. There are better movies than a certain Star Wars movie I'm about to name that have been made in the history of cinema. A lot. But this will always be my favorite movie because it is the thing I fell in love with first. And so just by default, as much as there's other properties that I would rank very highly, Empire Strikes Back is the greatest piece of Star Wars anything that has ever existed. I think I'm right in that opinion, but it's also purely opinion because I was 3 years old or 3.5, and it just was everything. I saw it. I literally saw it 6 weekends ago in a row with my dad, and cried like a baby on the 7th weekend when he said, "Are we going again?" And I said no, because I was playing with Matchbox cars on the front porch, and that was taking priority. And he drove away, and 3-year-olds are not the best with object permanence quite yet. So I thought, well, I'm never going to see Star Wars again. And 2, I don't think my dad's coming home because I saw him drive away in the car. So it was very traumatic. And
I would go see Star Wars with him, and he ran away.
I don't know if I've ever told this on your show, but that next winter, so the winter of 80, 81, I was so, and I probably did this for subsequent winters too. I was so intensely focused on recreating Hoth scenes as realistic as I could in the Michigan snow that I borderline got frostbite a bunch of times because I would put my non-covered face down into the snow and do the count in my head, knowing how long Luke had his face in the snow before Obi-Wan's ghost comes or before Han comes, and I do the count, and I had just neighborhood kids are like, you pull it up your head. I'm like, no, it's not time yet. Nope. And I come back, and my mom would be like, what's oh my God, and trying to warm me up. So
man, that's awesome.
When you threw the whole property thing at me, it made it tougher only because until you had something on VHS in the 80s, the toys were your gateway.
I see. I didn't even think of the toys. So when I said that, I didn't even think of the toys.
And it's toys and the figures and stuff were that's what I did. Oh, my other, and this is just dumb. My other thing would be I would make a giant pile of snow and try to recreate Echo Base. And so I'd dig out the tunnels and stuff. And then just I would do this every year, and I wouldn't learn my lesson because the snowtroopers are white. and you put them in there, and then you freaking lose them.
Yes.
Could not find them till spring. Could not find them till spring.
Yo, yes.
One assault,
yes.
Turn your back, gone for 3 months. Just every year it happened. I never learned.
Well, I mean that's a lesson that you can easily forget because it's kind of awesome at the same time. Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, sure, you lost your toys for a few months, but like they got lost at Hoff. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of cool. So for me,
in their natural habitat,
right? For me, favorite Star Wars property.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And again, we've talked about this on my podcast before. Favorite versus the best. My favorite is now The Mandalorian.
Okay, I'm gonna tell. I tell you what,
it's not the best, but my favorite. Yeah, I've fallen in love with the characters. Even like I always thought the Mandalorians were a cool concept from the get-go, but to see so much more about the backstory and the religion and all of that, it just, and then of course Grogu. I mean, come on, like I as a Star Wars fan know that George Lucas never wanted there to be any backstory on Yoda's race. Like if you look at the Star Wars databanks to this day, his race and planet of origin are both listed as unknown.
Right.
So for there to be another one, like we've seen a couple on screen, don't get me wrong. I know that and in comics, but like to see a child.
He broke his own rule a little bit in episode 1, right? And so there's like, but yes, his intent was right.
Yeah, it was definitely, and then like just the whole. I mean, I'm a sucker for the Darksaber as well. Like you pull out the Darksaber, I'm just like, yeah, I'm in. And just, I mean, Bo-Katan. I've always loved that character, even from the Clone Wars. I mean, I thought there was just such a deep character, and it connects with one of my favorite moments in Star Wars is the Siege of Mandalore from the last season of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So like all those characters are in the Mandalorian now. So you know what I mean? It's like it's all that connected, and I'm just a big fan.
Like the connective tissue is always a lot of fun, but what I have noticed as of late is sometimes the connective tissue isn't enough to maintain something that isn't the highest level quality too. Like I wanted Obi-Wan to be so good. I wanted it to be good so bad. And I
loved Obi-Wan.
Oh God. Well, okay. And that's fine.
That's interesting.
Lovely. And I'll tell you what, there's moments, hello there at the end almost made me cry.
Yeah.
It
did make me cry.
I don't know. Like I've got a film snob in me too. So I've got a movie making snob in me too. So as far as television,
which I get, it did have a lot of issues. Don't get me wrong, but again, we're talking about love versus quality. Like loved like because the moments with him and Vader. I think this is what it is. The moments with him and Vader were just so good that for my enjoyment aspect, I just don't even see the problems. So because that was just so good.
I'm wondering if you and I are going to differ then on Andor.
So I hated Andor.
You didn't love it, did you?
I didn't. I respect it. It's absolutely fantastic. Like when we talk about cinematically, it's the best of any Star Wars property.
I think it is by far the.
I just didn't enjoy it.
For me, it's not even close.
It's not. No, it is. You're right.
Like you put that together with then what Tony Gilroy came in on the back half of Rogue One, and then you combine that with him having free reign on Andor, and I think from a filmmaking quality standpoint, it's the best thing that's like probably ever
100%.
Right? I mean, I think from a 100%. Filmmaking standpoint, Empire is the best made film. That little combination, I can't. It was like watching, movies, but Clayton, it was beautifully written. It was wonderfully acted. It was. But probably the least amount of connective tissue out of
Well,
anything.
and see, and that's not what even bothered me. It just like, and it's not that it bothered me. Like again, for me, this is like The Godfather.
Yeah.
I can look at it and go, it's fantastic. I understand the appeal. I just don't like it, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, because everything you said from a cinematic, acting, directing, story, it is by far the best Star Wars property to date, and I will give it its flowers because it definitely is due. It just like there were a couple weeks where I completely forgot it was on. So I was like, oh shit, I got 2 episodes of Andor to watch. Like I really, it didn't sink in with me that it didn't. And I love Luna. I love Andy Serkis. Like there's so many people that I love in that show. It just, for whatever reason, it just didn't do it for me. And then I hear a lot of people, oh, it's because it didn't have Jedi's. No, that doesn't have to have Jedi's for me to be happy. I mean, I love Rogue One. I mean, which is strange that I truly, truly love Rogue One. Praise how good it was. Same exact thing. I'm just like, I don't, you know what? Maybe it's because I already know the character's dead in my head. Like none of this matters. Maybe that's what it is.
Are you ready? Are you ready for my Rogue One ranking take?
It's 2 behind Empire.
It's because I do let nostalgia rule my life to some degree. I don't think I can put it higher than 4. But I think it's 4th. Okay. I don't think, I mean, it might be a better made movie than Return of the Jedi, but I don't think I can put it. I think, for me, it goes 5, 4, 6, Rogue One. And I think that's mostly me talking about, hey, I can't betray my childhood by putting it ahead of one of the original 3.
Yeah. See, I've got it right behind Empire. I mean, because when I enjoyed New Hope and I enjoyed Return of the Jedi, and what happened in Return of the Jedi I never saw coming. Like the not turn at the end where if
you're allowing me to have a conversation and change the rules of the list, it's number 2 for me as well. But like I can't, dude. Okay, so I'm like what 3 months old May. So I'm 5 months old when New Hope hits. Okay, so it's not an in theater experience for me, except for my parents took me to like a re-release, because they just kept on re-releasing it to at drive-ins and stuff like that until Empire came out. And but like my first VHS copy of that was taped off of TV. And like when I listen to the soundtrack, right, the original soundtrack, I can hear the commercial breaks, like because I wore that tape out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And no, I do know exactly what you mean.
We did that editing thing where we paused, like the commercials aren't on our tape, but like I can hear the build, and there's that little snap, and the screen goes whatever, and that comes back, and I know where every commercial break is in the soundtrack because it's just awesome. It existed in my life from day one. So like, especially those first 2 movies, I just lived and breathed them. There was a phase in the mid-late 80s where I used to watch the end of Jedi on a loop with just the space battle. That's it.
Right.
And I would fast forward even through the throne room battle and Endor, because I, to this day, believe it is the best outer space battle captured on film ever, because it is at the height of model technology. It is pre-CG. And I know a lot of people love, like the beginning of episode 3 and stuff like that. And it's great, but there's just something about the practicality of Jedi, because it's, if you watch New Hope without the special edition where they jazz up that thing, I mean, it's pretty clunky. I mean, it was revolutionary, but it's pretty clunky the way the X-Wings move and the lack of the number of ships out there and stuff like that. Right. And Jedi is it's chaos, but it's all practical and it feels real. And I can't get enough of it. I think it's the best.
And I was trying to think of like something from Mando, but most of his great like pilot battles weren't even like in space. You know what I mean? Like all of the great stuff he did was straight up on planets and stuff. Okay. We definitely 15 minutes. I think is enough.
I saw you, dude. I saw your eyes go. I saw you looking and going, "Should we stop?" Because we.
Exactly. I was watching the time. All right, let's see. I'm gonna let it go a little bit. All right, here we go, guys. So now we're here for the real, the real reason we're here. You just had two Star Wars nerds geeking out on May the 4th, but we're really here to celebrate the amazing Kickstarter launch of Jane American, written by this glorious man right here, Jason Douglas.
Hello.
So at the timing of this, not recording because we're live, but it is. I'm going to look right now. We are at
118.
90. Well, so there's one more. Let me refresh.
One more
since boy.
118, 6,843.
So we're still at 94%. It looks like 94% funded, and it just dropped. What, Tuesday?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Tuesday. Tuesday.
6 a.m. Right. Tuesday 6 a.m. because I it should have gone, I think, at like 3 a.m. or something like that, but I forgot to press the button before I went to bed that night, and I didn't know that you had it. So I woke up and I'm like, "What's going on?" And like before
Where is it?
Work, I was like, ugh.
Oh my god! So you know what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna actually play the trailer.
Yeah.
Official trailer.
Let's note, I picked the music, I picked the images, I wrote the words, but this thing was lovingly handcrafted by 2 of my 3 children.
They're better than some people I know.
My youngest made the video. My son put the music in and queued it up, basically because I don't know how to do any of that.
You know, which is really funny though. I posted the trailer, and it was banned in all of one country. Right. We're all good to go everywhere else, but for some reason, Russia has problem with this great woman powerful comic book, and they don't want it to be aired on their airwaves. So we are not live in Russia. No Russia for Jane America.
It doesn't make any sense. World War II, we were allies. World War II, night witches. They were very female forward in their soldiers and their pilots. It's ridiculous. I'm okay with them banning us in the 21st century, but come on, we're talking about 1940s here.
No, he's not. We are in present day. We don't like you. All right, here we go. So we're gonna play this trailer. Is it gonna work?
That's not the trailer.
There we go.
Oh, nope.
Nope.
I
loaded the wrong thing.
The postcard.
Oh, I'm horrible.
It looks good. It's a lovely. I'm glad we're showing it.
Hold on. Oh no, this is not good. I'm going to get it right now. I can't believe I did that. I was sitting here like, I'm so prepared. I have everything loaded. Just got to hit one button. Apparently, you didn't.
I think you got. Let's be honest. I'm pretty sure you just got Russian hacked. That's not your fault.
You know what? It has to be. Yep. It absolutely has to be. How dare they?
Answer, man.
Them sons of bitches. Oh my god! And you know what? It won't even let me load it for some reason. It's a .mov. It won't let me load it. Oh yeah. Thanks, Russia.
It's fine. You go to. Do you have the link up somewhere, or you can just go to Kickstarter.com.
Yes.
Search up Jane American, and it's literally the top image. It's got the play. You play it.
Here we go.
It's fun. Oh, we're gonna get it.
I'm going to.
K-pop's bagging books while we do this. Oh.
Here we go. You seeing the
I can see you got your screen there, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think you're showing it though.
Is it showing?
No, it's just a screen. It's like a screen capture of us.
What?
Yeah. I'm telling you, dude, you've been hacked. Yeah, there's no. I don't. If I'm supposed to be seeing what you want people to see, it is definitely not up there.
It says that I'm sharing the entire screen, so it looked like it was there for a second, but I'm sorry. That is just the worst thing ever.
They can
It
go watch the trailer.
just hurt my feelings.
It is sitting there. It's literally the lead image on the page to watch it.
But I suck.
It's good.
Why is it? Sorry, I'm on a Mac, and I'm definitely not accustomed to Mac like saying, "Are you sure you want to do that, dude? Just go away." I did it. I clicked it. I meant to do that, you jerk. Okay, so this book, Jane American, it's a big, very important book to you. Not only because obviously it's your second book, and you want to write more. I mean, that's the obviously glaring thing in the open. But there's more deep reason. You want to go into a little example why?
Sure. Yeah, you have it exists almost independently of you look at it in the stream of you write your first book and now here comes the second one. Because like the idea begins for this book and the motivation for this book develops before Parallel became what Parallel became, right? Like even in the early days, it was talking like when it flopped into the pandemic, right? Before all that stuff, like this book is percolating and gestating from earlier than that. And the reason why, as personal as Parallel is to me, like, let's be honest, I don't know if I've admitted this before, but Parallel, which is about a person going through their quarter life crisis, the existential dread of time passing and deferring your dreams. And part of the big motivation for me writing that book is maybe I was going through my own very midlife crisis about time passing and deferring your dreams. And it was time to write my first comic book, right? And as personal as that is, this one is even more so because, as you mentioned, this one is inspired by and named after my late grandmother, who basically went through and fought against, not entirely successfully, being put in the same kind of box by societal expectations in a 1940s America, right? There's family names throughout this book. Like almost every character named is either the first name or the last name of somebody from that generation or the generation before in my family on that side. This book is very much dedicated to my late grandfather, who got to see me. He turned 99 in February, made it to 99 in a month, World War II veteran, right? Got married to my grandmother when they were 19, got to see the early stages of this book, and it was literally the delight of like the end of his life. And, I've mentioned this in a few places, but like as he was declining, the script to the 32-page one-shot sat next to him in bed. The images as Annie was drawing them, like the 5 pages that you can see on the Kickstarter, and were on his tablet at all times, and he was just flipping through them. All Annie's character sketches, which nobody gets to see quite yet, including the one that is physically based on him, were on his tablet. He's flipping through them like every single day. And my favorite part about his involvement in this process is during the early research phase. And I know you and I have talked about kind of, what the book is about, and we'll do a better job of that in a minute. But like when I'm doing like this exhaustive research to make sure I'm getting the era right, and because it's it takes place in a real place, right? It takes place in Plymouth, Michigan in the 1940s, basically 1939, but the present day is 1946, and a bunch of flashbacks in between. It's a real place with it takes place in this factory that was a real factory that my great grandfather worked in during World War II. And my grandfather and I, a couple of years ago, literally got a tour of this place, Wall Wire, that got a war contract. While all the big GM and Ford factories down the road were building bombers, this little wire factory in Plymouth got a war contract to make Marsden mats, which even if you don't know the name, you know what they are if you're a history nerd, because it's the temporary runways piece by piece of this metal sheeting that they would stamp and make with these. So you could island hop, right? And just have you'd have an airstrip in a minute instead of having to find one and
to build one. Yeah.
and this was the factory. This is one of a few factories in the country that were making these. And we just through some luck and some, a couple of phone calls, this person fact literally the week before they tore it apart and fragmented into Office Space. And what that meant was they had stripped out everything that made it the factory that it was for the next 70 years post the World War II era. So it was stripped down to all of its original stuff, and I got all the film and all the footage and all the pictures of there's the conveyor belt that went over there and off to the train depot. And there's the stairwell where I'm going to set this part of the story. And there's the office where the punch clock was. And you can see the freaking thing on the wall where the punch clock was, like the outline.
Yeah, the outline from where the discoloration of time. Yeah.
It's wild. So like when you see the factory in the book, it's not some out of my mind. It's like when Annie draws it, it's going to be from this thing that actually existed in the real world. And the fact that he was there with me to do that, it just, I don't know. There's something so imbued in this that just the history it's alive in this book.
Right. Yeah.
Like when you even look at the 5 preview pages on the Kickstarter right now, I need everybody to understand. I've got this. It's not a theory. It's become something that I truly believe in as a writer. Okay, it's a creed. It's a policy now.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that if I am going to ask somebody reading one of my books to suspend their disbelief for anything, that everything else I should do has got to be spot on. Okay. Yeah. If I'm going to ask you in parallel to suspend your disbelief that there's an other Landon reaching out, offering him a second chance from a parallel world, there's not going to be a single piece of medical lingo that's going to be off, right? There's not going to be a single thing that the psychiatrist says that somebody who knows their stuff is going to go, no, I'm out. That's BS. I refuse, right?
Nope.
I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how many sources I got to do. I don't care how much research it is. And I'm going to rely on Google as little as I can. Like in parallel, I feel like we probably talked about this before, but like when there was medical stuff, like I called up my doctor cousin and she helped me write it. When there was police stuff, like I called up the Officer Brian Tillman and DE agent Brian Tillman, and like, what would a detective say in this instance? I want it to be real, right? The same with the psychologist in that book. And for this, on one hand, I could do a Google image search and you can see on the pages, like when you see the icebox in the back, there it is, right? I can't do the pointing, but right down there in the corner, when you see that icebox, like I found that icebox and I made sure it's like a 1936 model, right? Because that scene is in 1943. This is not a rich family. It's not going. Right. First of all, I'm never going to give you a 1955 refrigerator. I will never do that to you. I will lose sleep if there's one pedantic nerd, because I appreciate a pedantic nerd because I am one. If there is one pedantic nerd who's like, and the voice, right? That model of truck didn't come out until blah blah blah, and I just oh my god,
no. Oh my God! You're preaching to the choir.
We could be a couple years down the road. The big 120-page graphic novel that the funding of this will help fund down the road, that could exist. It could be winning awards, and some guy could stand up and say, "Well, I did notice that," and I just be like, "Well,
technically,
I failed the whole thing. Forget it."
Yep. No, you're preaching to the choir. I completely understand that. I mean, I've actually started writing my own comic book thanks to you. That parallel actually kind of jump started me. I read that and was like, I'm Landon. Oh my God! And then I started writing. But when I get to the point where I've rewritten, so like I'm only at the freaking ash can stage because I have rewritten the original draft probably about 40 times. Because I'll read it again and go, there's a loophole. No, someone's going to point that out, and I'm going to point it out first. We need to fix this.
So this 32-page one-shot went through a pretty extensive rewrite process that was not part of the original plan and ended up making it, I think, a much better story and a much better book. And I don't think I've ever talked about this before because it existed as at its original inception. I wrote 22 pages and then sketched out all the story beats for issues 2, 3, and 4. And then it was basically somebody that it was Garrett Gunn and Dr. Christy Blanche, who were like, that is not how this is going to work. Because like I'm also, as I'm planning this second project, I'm also kind of gently being guided down the path of, listen, dude, the way Parallel went into the world, I know you know this, but I don't think you're quite internalizing enough. That was an atypical story. That is not how comics are made in the 21st century. You're going to have to crowdfund this first before it becomes the normalized comic that goes out like in previews or something. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, sure. So anyway, here's a 20 pages. You're like, no, dude, you don't understand. This is not how this works. What you need is this. What you need is a big fat one shot at the beginning to do X, Y, and Z. And then you plan on, and then you go. So what we did is, and Christy really helped me on this, is we went back in and I think, look, here's a promise I'm going to make you about this book. Let me give you like this little pitch. Okay. So like, this is a 32-page, one-shot, full-color comic, right? It is a complete story in itself, but it is also the introduction to the larger world of Jane and her big arc of a story that I still have to tell. It's very much about exploring the themes of identity and gender and self-worth in that small town, societal restrictive norms of wartime and post-World War II America. There's hints of blood stories like Superman for All Seasons, Archie 1941. But here's what I'm going to promise you. These 32 pages, especially because of what Christy and I did on the second pass to turn it from 22 to 32, in this little arc right here, it's going to break your heart. It's going to make you cheer, and it's going to shock you with a cliffhanger ending that's going to have you begging for more. And I'm not saying the 22 pages wouldn't have done that, some of that. I am telling you that the 32
does.
Like, I've written a little, I've read a lot. This does the job. So I'm really excited about that. So you've got, in 1946, you've got our 15-year-old protagonist, right? And Jane's life has been filled with more than enough responsibility for a young girl coming of age in small town wartime America. There's family tragedy that the trauma of which, and you're getting hints of it as you look at the unlettered pages right here on the screen. That tragedy, I'm going to speak in code, but if you are a comic book nerd, you know what I'm talking about. That tragedy triggers a change in her that allows her to do things, okay? Changes her in unbelievable ways that in this time and in this world are better left hidden, okay? Yet the economic hardships and realities of post-World War II America, when dad doesn't come home and Rosie's no longer have a job, right, kind of leave Jane with this choice. She can stay safe, she can stay hidden, or she can embrace who she really is for the sake of everyone that she loves.
Which is, it's not an easy decision anytime in human history, but especially then.
Right. And that's what brings me to the other dedication of this book. This book is not only about and inspired by my grandmother. It's not only dedicated to the memory of my recently passed grandfather and everything and his involvement in this book and his dream to see it in the world. It's also very much dedicated to every single student who's passed through my classroom over the last 23 years, who even 70, 80 years after my grandmother went through some of these same struggles are still struggling with identity and self-worth. And a parent, a teacher, a society, a peer that tells them that who they are is wrong. And, you know, I'm thinking a lot about X-Men when I think about Jane. Yeah. Not just because Sina Grace did one of our covers. I'm thinking a lot about X-Men when I think about Jane, because X-Men is the original brilliant catch-all analogy for insert group here, and they could be the stand-in for the mutant metaphor has covered a lot of ground over the last decades. I personally though think that X-Men got best when not only was the mutant metaphor being used for insert group A, B, and C, but also real representation was there as well. So like when I think about Jane, and I think about it differently, because I mean, every single character is fictional, but I'm also seeing a lot of like family members and people that I know in there, and I'm seeing students.
Of course,
there. So I'm seeing reality, but like, you know, Jane's metaphor, it can be a metaphor for any group you want, but it's also the literal thing that women went through, forward in society for 5 years, and now you need to step back, right? The larger stories are the same thing with race, right? Like the amount that this country relied on African American soldiers and African American labor during World War II, and then immediately when it's over, and now you need to step back. I mean, if you and I are being honest, and me as a history nerd, we look at 1955 as like the beginning of the civil rights movement. We look at the movement of the college kids in 1960 with sit-ins and stuff. But like the civil rights movement gestates in the fact that soldiers came home from World War II, and workers got sent home from factories at the end of World War II. And suddenly you're asked to take a step back, and it was like that doesn't settle well, and that's where like the start of that comes from. It's like all of that's here. So you've got like the literal history, and then you've got the mutant metaphor too. Somebody who can do something who that would be looked at as other and scary and whatever. So you have to hide. You have to hide. Yeah. And circumstances are going to arise where if you hide, people are going to get hurt. So do you come out and show who you are? Do you embrace who you are, even though there's going to be people who are going to say that's wrong? And that's something that like I've got teenagers today in my classroom right now who are still living with that in the 21st century. Extrapolate that back to 1946, and it's like mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're just trying to be you, right? And sorry, not allowed.
No, how dare you? No, and I can only imagine, like, because you're a teacher, you when you're writing these characters, I'm sure whether it's even conscious sometimes, because I bet you there's a couple of times where you've written a character and then afterwards you're like, wait a minute, oh, okay, I know where I got that inspiration. Like I don't think people understand how hard it can be to. I think it might be easier almost to create an entire world from scratch than to accurately honor the real world.
Yeah.
And because you want, like you said, you don't want to have one of those people like someone like me who'd be like, well, I've actually done the research, and that actually wouldn't have been there at that time because not until 1974. You can easily, when you're doing your own worlds, it's all yours. Nothing. Yeah, while it takes maybe more mental capacity to create your own universe, in terms of worrying about someone doing research and out snooping yourself, it doesn't exist when you're creating your own universe.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. Probably, I agree with you. I think at the base level, it's probably easier to invent something only because then there's no rules.
Right.
But you're then tasked with inventing all the rules. and if you leave something out, then it can fall flat, right? There's no presupposed depth to the world that you create because it doesn't exist until you create it, right? Whereas I say wartime America, and a certain segment of the population knows what that means broadly. Now, what you said, the very difficult thing is not to screw it up. Because it exists, you've got this whole other set of problems of, hey, they didn't, there weren't there weren't Teslas on the road. Sorry, dude. What are you doing? It's not how that works.
Well, actually, there was one, because there's a time traveler that uses a Tesla.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not actually a DeLorean. That's just something that we've made up over years. It's actually a Tesla. And they're just going back and forth through time. He was the same guy that was at that boxing match with the iPhone, the Ali fight. No, but I remember when we first talked about it, and I remember thinking, this sounds amazing. Like, we were talking at that time, I think we talked afterwards more about it, because I don't think we talked too much on the live that time, because it was like, well, I'm not going to really talk too much, but like, basically you did your elevator pitch, and I just was like, oh my God, I love it.
Well, this has been such a different. Do you remember, like, back when we were much more heavily talking about the first book, I would talk all the time about how every single experience I had with it was the first time.
Yeah.
Right. And how weird that was, having a dream since you were 12, and yet you don't fulfill it until like you're 40. And like, writing for the first time, writing a comic script for the first time, signing a contract for the first time, seeing a piece of art come in for the first time. It's in previews for the first time. My first it was all first, right? And then because the process of this on most levels is drastically different than the production of Parallel, it's been a whole lot more firsts. And I remember, to come back to what you were talking about, like, when we were talking about this early on, I didn't know how to talk about it because I didn't know how it was going to exist in the world yet. And it was like, when I did the bulk of Parallel Press, the bulk of it was post-release when it didn't do well. And I did like the 75 shows that allowed it to catch the momentum, and it turned into like what it did. For anybody who doesn't know, it eventually sold out and got the 2 Ringo nominations. But like,
hold on, wait, you're underselling that. It sold out to the point that Source Point was contacting comic book shops that still had them in inventory to buy them back to meet the demand online. Okay, he's very humble, doesn't like to admit things like that, but there's a reason why it was nominated for 2 Ringo Awards. Okay, like it was fantastic, and just talking about Parallel for a second. I remember when I was at SuperCon last year, and I saw a vendor that had 4 of the books. I lost my shit. I went and grabbed them all and bought them all, and the first thing I did, I ran to the food court, found a clean table, put them all on the table, took a picture, was like, you will never believe what I just found. And I still have, I think, 2 copies. Like, I actually gave, because people were like, I want to read it. And I wanted to read it so bad that I was like, yeah, please, I will put it in your next shipment. Just buy something today just so I have the address, and I'll ship it right to you. It was fantastic. And then your reaction when I sent you the picture from MegaCon this year. Look what I got. And you were like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be out.
But like, what I realized was, like, I didn't necessarily know how, like, in the early days when we were like teasing this or whatever it was we were doing, I realized I didn't necessarily know how to talk about something that really didn't exist yet, or at least didn't exist at the level that I was very used to talking about something where it was this fully formed, realized thing. And I got very used to talking about that and promoting that and like interacting with that. And here I am talking about something that was, pieces of it existed, but like it was still 50% idea. And it was so weird. And so it was like, hey, and I think the only thing that got you excited, and I don't want to put like words in your head or anything, but like, clearly I had like the passion for it, right? And I could talk about certain things that I was like, oh, this is really exciting for me. And maybe that translated, but like, on the Kickstarter page right now, you can go and see the trailer. You can go and see the pages. You can go see our wicked cool exclusive covers. Like you can read all the stuff I put on there, and the script exists and the pages exist. You know what I mean? And so it's easier to talk about now. I think the only thing that I'm struggling with, and you heard me do it earlier, is I'm trying to look structurally from a writer standpoint. It's the same as Parallel in the fact that there's a comic book wrapping paper around it, and there's universal themes, the deep,
right,
the thing that you know what, you're a sci-fi comic person, you go read Parallel and you're going to be entertained as all get out. But what you're going to stay for, what you're going to reread it for, is the fact that it connects to you on that very universal theme level of dreams deferred and time passing,
right,
and dread and anxiety that comes with it, right? And for this one, if you are a fan of, again, watch me carefully sidestep. If you are a fan of the most popular comic genre in America, you're going to love this because you are going to recognize a lot of things. I can't even tell you how there are people who are going to freak out when they see the last splash page of this 32-page one-shot. They're going to go, I know what that is. And you'll love it for that. But what's going to make you love the characters and make you want more are the themes of identity and self-worth and fulfilling your purpose, right? The things that we all deal with at one point or another, no matter what age, no matter what shape, no matter what gender, it's us. And same thing. But I'm a nerd. Of course I'm going to wrap it in comic book goodness, right?
Right.
No, absolutely. That too.
Well, and then not only that, but it's an intentional Trojan horse almost. Like, there's some people that may not give the themes a shot until they go, oh, it's like a I'm trying to tiptoe myself. The tiniest of back flowing fabric type of story, and they'll go, okay, I'll give it a shot, and then they'll start reading and go, oh wow, this is really good. And like I feel like that's what Star Wars did with Grogu. Like they were like, we're gonna get every single person on the planet watching The Mandalorian. How? We're gonna make the cutest little mini Yoda of all time. Right. And it's going to get everyone, including the girlfriends and the kids and the old people. Everyone's going to be there. Like, and it works. It's not like I'm saying that anything wrong with that. I mean, I'm doing the same thing with my book. I mean, I'm telling the story of duality of man and the fall of society wrapped up in a zombie novel. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I put a little zombie bow on it. So there you go. And you'll be like, okay, I'll read this because you'll think zombies, not how deep I'm going to go into the fall and breakdown of society. But there's a lot of times where, unfortunately, in almost any sort of entertainment, you kind of got to trick some people into giving it a shot by putting some fancy wrapping paper on it, And then once they give it a shot, they're like, oh, man, I'm glad I did. And I feel like the sci-fi wrapping of Parallel that really helped it. Because there were some people that are just huge sci-fi nerds that read it just for the sheer hell of it, versus someone like me. Like when you said the time passing and dreams deferred, that's what I'm like. That's what I want to hear about. You're wearing a Grogu shirt? I almost put a Grogu shirt on. I've got a Force Awakens shirt on right now. K-pop said she's wearing a Grogu shirt. See?
I'm sure I've said this to you before, but like I believe in bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Right. And so like having more than one way to enjoy a story is one way to do that. Right. Yeah. I love rereadability. I love something that you can think about differently depending on where you are in your life, what mood you're in. Give me as many different ways to interpret something. Like, The Princess Bride might be the greatest movie ever made because it works. It's not animation, but it invents Pixar because it works for every single age group, and you see it differently, and you get different jokes at different times. And
no, absolutely. I've talked at length how that movie is, at length about The Princess Bride. Like it stands the test of time. There was nothing like even the practical effects that like were like high tech then. You watch it now, you're like that still looks pretty damn good. Like wait, how is that even possible?
Right.
You know, and when we were talking when Parallel first came out and I read it and then I had to immediately reread it because I couldn't believe I didn't catch certain things and like because like I didn't catch that it wasn't really like a parallel universe type thing. You know what I mean? I immediately the first time I read it, I'm like, wow, so this is. I'm wondering if the dude's gonna cross over and take over his life, and then. No, and I literally was like, how did I not notice this? And I went right back to the beginning and reread it instantly. And I don't think a lot of writers, especially at the big two, really give a shit about that. And I think that is very well seen in how they treat certain characters just to make another run, and versus indie where every story has to hit because A, it's not likely my audio is going wonky.
Yeah, it's really bad. Do you remember we talked about off air ahead of time with the robot sound and it basically sounds like you're talking to the mic and a robot is repeating your words right after it. Like a really distorted droid.
Well, that's not good.
No,
I mean, not for nothing, but on Star Wars Day, it would be the day that shit happens. Yeah. Nope, I'm a droid now, guys. Damn. Let me see if I can tweak something quick. I thought it was the headphones. Maybe that's not what it was.
I don't know. What'd you do to fix it the first time? Because it got really clear for a while, and then it's like slowly been getting worse and worse and worse.
I just unplugged my other headphones because they kept dying, and when I go off the headphone, it kind of
it's like
that echo,
super distorted.
Oh, wait a minute! I know why. Oh my god! I bet you because is that better? No.
No. In fact, it's literally it's a delay, and the robot speaks whatever you're speaking like a second after you.
Damn technical difficulties, son of a bitch. All right, hold on. Let me try something real quick.
Like
I found it. Yeah. For some reason, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Better?
Yeah. Go on.
Somehow, I don't know how, my audio got changed from my mic to my camera mic in the middle of the show without me changing anything. You guys gotta tell me earlier when this shit like that happens.
We're actually texting back and forth, talking about it. We didn't want to be rude. We didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll. Oh well.
See, look. If there was ever any doubt that this was live, you just got it. Oh my god! How did that? What the hell? I was on a roll. I can't wait to watch this back. You know what's gonna happen? I'm going to specifically make little edits of just the robot voice.
Yeah.
And go like, look, I was full Star Wars mode during our interview. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep.
You're gonna be fascinated. It is a very interesting experience to hear a robot repeat all your words on a delay.
Wow.
Yeah. You'll be
well. I you know what? That I said I'm gonna be cracking up about that. For real though, next time the second it starts, like, hey, you're not sounding too good. Because I would listen. You know me, I can go on a roll without being told to go on a roll.
Yeah.
But now that everything is back,
yes.
The Jane American Kickstarter is live. Yeah. It's 94% funded already. This is the stream you're looking for. Oh my god.
Quick on your feet,
That's
man.
So
very impressive. Nicely done.
Jeez. Yeah, it's still 94%. But man, I mean, the further we get, we talked about this, before the show. You have specific goals that you want to hit. You want to talk about those real quick? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think my biggest fear going into this was, this being my first Kickstarter. It's pretty daunting, right? The all or nothing idea. A project scary enough. Like, I don't like, was there a meeting? Was there a Kickstarter meeting where they're like, you know what? It's not, we need to add a level of abject terror. Let's make it where if they fall short by 1 penny, they get nothing. Great idea, Jim. Let's put it to a vote, all hands up. That's the way it works. So like, that's always kind of freaked me out. But like what I really want people to understand as we're closing in, for a small book, for not a huge name in the industry by any stretch of the means, like to be within a couple of days of launching and we're this close to actually getting the funding. And you can read this on the page, but one of the things I want people to understand is that not a penny of this goal goes to me, right? I work my butt off with 180 teenagers every single day to pay the bills. This is pure passion, especially this one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Indie comics, the margins are pretty small anyway. And I'm not taking a penny for this. The goal for this is, according to people who know better than me, for this size book, for this type of story, for the size of what this is and the kind of the cool covers and whatever that are being offered, and certainly the exclusive cover artists and who they are in the industry. Mm-hmm. This is probably $3,000 to $4,000 lower than normal. And that is important to me, to make it more reasonable for people to help me get this out in the world. And part of that is not a penny goes to me. Part of it is I'm doing all this hustling. Like this is literally going to be printed at a printing company in Plymouth, Michigan, the very place that this story takes place in historically. And so like, on one hand, that's like really, really cool because they're like a fixture of the community for the last 40 years as a printing company. And now they have a comics wing, but it's also like, oh my God, this is where the story takes place. This is where I grew up. This is where my parents grew up. This is where my grandparents, came home from World War II from, and that's really awesome. And guess what? I'm not going to pay for shipping because I'm going to go pick up the book. So like I found there's about a half a dozen different things that I did along the way, as well as none of the money goes to me, to make it a much more reasonable goal. Now, having said that, I've got some wicked cool stretch goals that you can read about on there too, because what my hope and dream is, and this will be the grind, right? The fact that this isn't one of those books, because of the subject matter of it, gets funded, or the big name creators gets funded in like 2 minutes, and then you're working on doubling it, tripling it, and quadrupling it like in the first week. But my goal is to get as far over our actual goal as possible. And again, not a penny of that will go to me, for the simple fact that once Jane American One Shot exists in the world, the goal is to immediately start funding the 120-page original graphic novel that has the whole story. And, that cliffhanger ending that you got at the end of this, where you go, oh, I need some more. I want to give you the rest. And the goal is for this funding to go as far as it can, and every single dollar of that will just defray the cost of the OGN, right? Because let's be honest, a Kickstarter on the back of another Kickstarter that's asking you suddenly for $25,000, the chances of that are pretty darn slim. So my promise to backers of this project is let's keep going until the end of May, right? Seeing as the original publishing goal is so close right now, like even tonight, we're going to keep grinding it out and hustling until the end of May, because every dollar we go over, not only are there really cool stretch goals, as I said, and you get some pretty cool stuff, but like it's just going to make the next project and this thing that the people who are backing this are going to want to see that much more feasible and possible, right? And this is not me saying anything negative about people who actually
No, right.
Those stretch goals exist because they need to sustain, right? The creator of the project needs to eat too. And I completely respect that, because Kickstarter is a way that indie creators of all type can get stuff out in the world and be whole and make maybe even a living out of it. And it's also like becoming a much more important way that good stuff is being distributed, as
True.
Comics specifically, as like the distribution world is kind of, let's be honest, falling apart. Kickstarter is like becoming something that's going to probably step in there too. So I completely respect that. I completely get that. That's not what I'm going to do though. Okay. None of this is for me. This is all to get this story that I'm passionate about, to get this story that I really think a huge swath of people are going to be able to relate to and enjoy, as feasible as I can make it to get it into your hands. So that's why, let's say we hit this goal overnight. Let's say we hit it tomorrow. Let's say we hit it this weekend sometime. We can't stop. You need to keep spreading the word. You need to keep getting it out there. You need to keep pushing it. You need to donate if you haven't. Because again, there are cool stretch goals. Like I'm not, it's not just the charity of kindness.
No, you're right.
There's good stuff. I'm not an idiot. Like I know how I almost said I know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I think I've done a good job for the first time.
No, well, but you do know comics, and you know what people like. You know what I mean? So you may not have the technical knowledge of the Kickstarter campaign stuff, but you know the type of things that would be like, ooh, I want that.
Look what K-pop just said in the comments. Like, here we are doing this. Here we are talking about this period piece, right? And yet the comic book nerd in me couldn't help yourself. Turning one of the covers and giving it the holochrome treatment, because I grew up in the 1990s.
Yep.
And Bloodshot #1 and Exo Manowar 0 are very pretty books to look at, in my opinion. I understand that they're a punchline for some people, but you know what?
Oh my God.
I like the cover to Turok #1. I do. Shadow Man 0. Give me that shininess, okay? And so I made one of those.
And that's the thing. There's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to be like, oh my God, he gave us a 90s foil. Yo, did you see this 90s foil? Oh, we got to get this 90s foil.
Well, and like, because I tell you what, that exists. So that's the
Wildcats.
The Malia cover does that, right? And then for our much more 21st century, like, ooh, that pops for that, is we do have, and this one, I'll tell you what, this one people have got to get on, because we did do a textless variant for the Malia cover, which is that very heavily Rosie the Riveter themed one. It's gorgeous. Okay. Looks great on its own. It looks great as a holochrome. But the textless is just really, there's something about it. It's like really pretty. Okay.
Right.
And that's the one I've got a bunch of the incentives on there. A bunch of the covers are limited numbers. Okay. So you got to be aware of that if this is something you want to do. But that's the only one that's also a timestamp limited. That one goes away on May 17th. So if you're into that and you go and look at it and you go, oh, that looks really sharp, I want one of those. It's not even just about the numbers, which are limited as well. It's a timestamp too. And then we maybe even take it up another notch, because Cena Grace, who I name dropped earlier, and you know him from X-Men and from Iceman, and he's got his new Superman book coming out. And if you're an indie fan, you know him from Burn the Orphanage and Little Depressed Boy. And if you just really know the comics industry, you know that he is the dude who edited The Walking Dead for like the first third of it, or almost 2/3 of it, and basically ran Skybound for Kirkman until he went off and started doing more books on his own. And he did a cover for us that, when you go look at it, we're calling it, Garrett Gunn, the great Garrett Gunn, named it the Granddad's Attic variant because it has a very vintage feel to it. It feels like a Tintin cover from like the 40s or the 50s. And then David Lentz, my letterer designer, vintaged it up, right? He did the aging process.
He's
Like, think
amazing.
if you're a Black Hammer fan, think Black Hammer 1945, like those covers that look like they've been in the box or whatever. But we're taking it a step further than that. So yeah, when you look at that cover, you can see the creases, the fake creases, the staining, right? In the corner, the spine tick here, the blunted edge there, right? The thing that's gonna piss you off when your CGC copy comes back if it was real and you go, oh my God, I got marked down for that. So that's all been faux created on the cover. And then we're taking it up a level because this is kind of new. All right. My printing company in Plymouth, Michigan has got this thing that they're doing. It's one of their newest treatments. It's called the soft touch laminate. Okay. Now what the soft touch laminate means is it feels kind of like suede when you touch it.
Okay.
And so when you combine this touch with this look,
with the old,
it literally looks and feels like a book from the 1940s. Awesome. Now it literally looks like you're pulling it out of Granddad's attic after 80 years. And if I could bottle comic smell and spray it on every single one of the books, I think I'd make $1 million because it literally, there's 3 things that make golden age books, right? They are beat to hell, right?
Yep.
They feel softer. They feel different because the paper has aged.
Yeah.
And then they've got the comic smell. And I nailed 2 of the 3. And 66% ain't bad.
No, it's not. Especially in something like, I mean, the only part you didn't get would require a time machine. So I'm pretty sure you're doing pretty well.
And the best part is, it's going to look like it's aged and been beat to hell, and you're going to send it in and still get a 9.8. It's literally the best of both worlds. Come on.
No, it's especially, when you talk about Kickstarter like goals, you think about things that are out of the ordinary or that would really catch someone's eye. Yeah. And there are collectors that are going to see that and go, whoa, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that. And that's a good thing.
And that's like something else. And we've had this conversation and I think in different contexts. Like if anybody asked me to be introspective and like, hey, what kind of collector are you? I'm literally a 50-50 down the middle collector, right? Half of me is chasing the covers, chasing the keys, chasing the runs, a collector. And the other half, exactly 50-50, is just a reader of stories, right? And the same with movies. I need my film. I need my popcorn, right? I'm the same with how I read novels. I need my Stephen King. I need my snooty high literature. It's always half and half. And like, if you take a minute to like look at the Kickstarter, and then when you read the book, like we've already talked about, like the depth of relatable universal themes in the story. But that doesn't mean I'm going to ignore a freaking chance to do a 90s Valiant holochrome cover on this book that maybe has more depth than something that was on the rack in the 90s. Bang for your buck, because I'm a highfalutin snob and a down and dirty nerd at the exact same time. So you get it all, I think, right?
You get the best of both worlds, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really, we've talked at length about how much I respect how you've gone about things. I mean, you saw something you wanted to do and you did it. And even though we've talked on this podcast about how it wasn't, it's not the way it normally goes down. And we talked about tonight how that whole process was like a once in a lifetime thing. That process for Parallel is set aside on its own thing. But the story of it is just, it's so beautiful. It's almost like to the point where there should be a movie about it. Like because like not for nothing, it's that, like you said, that willful optimism of not knowing any better, and you just did it. Like you just did it and it worked, and whether or not you can look at that as a cautionary tale, because some people will try to do that and then get denied outright, and then that's it, they're done, and luckily for you, we won't have to know what that would have been, how you would have had to handle that, right?
I mean, I mean, when you think about like there were so many, it took so much to get me to have the courage to take that first big scary step of starting in the first place. On the one hand, I fought through a lot of like, oh, well, that's not encouraging. But on the other hand, I'm with you. Like, I don't know. I mean, because, well, you already know the story. I mean, like, it was first script. It was the first live booth I approached. It was the only pitch. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
I can't even to this day, having lived it, wrap my mind completely around the series of events, because it feels like a success story from day one, because there's all these very improbable things. I think about it. Like I said, I think I've said twice just now in our talk, like it flopped hard on release, like hard, to the point where, like, you were telling the story about them buying back copies when it caught its momentum. And I didn't hear about that until I'm at Baltimore to sell, because we had already sold out of the book. And I'm at Baltimore to sell the con exclusive and to do the Ringo Awards. And I did my very first panel, and I'm sitting there next to Travis, who was still editor-in-chief of SourcePoint at the time. And like, that's when he told me about the buyback thing. And I'm telling my story, and then I'm speechless for a minute because he tells me this thing I didn't know. And then he's the one in that very same panel, in that very same conversation, he tells me how hard it flopped upon release. And like he and Josh told me it didn't do good. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, but like, I also didn't know what that meant, right, numbers wise and stuff like that. And like, he very much clearly like laid it on the line at this panel that like, it was like bad. And they were like, oh God, we made a mistake. And then he told me, and again, I didn't know this, like what's supposed to happen next is, if you're an author who is in it for the long haul, and maybe it's like your fifth book or something that flopped, you just move on to the sixth book. Or if it's like this kind of a once in a lifetime shot thing like I had, usually what happens is, you know what? I took my shot. I did achieve my dream on most levels, because the dream was to publish a comic book, and that happened. And then it's like, thanks for the experience, back to the life. And because I didn't, like you've already said this, because I didn't know that that's how it was, and nobody told me at the time, I went off and did 75 interviews over the next 18 months because the cons were canceled and the signings were canceled, and I couldn't think of anything better to keep it going, but I didn't want it to end, and nobody told me to stop, even though you were supposed to. And so it happened the way it happened. It's not a story to emulate in the fact that like, here's the easiest path to get to comic book publishing, because I don't know if it could ever be created, because it's so freaking weird.
And I don't know if it can, like, to the point where, like, I'm, as I said many times, I'm writing my own book. When I went to MegaCon, I had basically, I mean, I showed it to some people in the industry, but not to any, like, I didn't pitch it to anyone like, hey, you want to pick this up type thing, because of the feedback I got, but that's neither here nor there. But I have art, the story, lettering, crappy lettering, which is going to get redone, and all that ready to go. And I still, I left it all in the room. I was like, I don't have the balls to do this right now. I don't, I mean, like I said, I showed it to a few people to get their takes, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, that worked for Jason. You know what? It's not going to work for me. So I'm going to put this out myself, and then hand them a physical copy and go from there.
Yeah. And that's, you know what? There's been points where I thought, well, and that's almost kind of what this is too, right? I mean, that's what this is. That's much more typical how things are made in the 21st century. And I don't know why lightning struck when it did and how it did. I don't know why, it just did. So like I said, I don't know if that's not the part of the story that you can be amused by it, you can be fascinated by it, but that's not the one to emulate. I think if you're going to take something from this, you need to just do it, right? You need, perseverance is important, and finally taking the risk of putting something into the world is the message to take. Not necessarily like put it in a file manila folder from your classroom with pretty paper clips and walk it up to a dude with a big red beard. Like, that's not happening again. I don't know why it happened to me. It did. But like the make your piece of art, the follow your dream piece, that's something that I could highly encourage anybody to follow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names because that would not be appropriate. But I had a conversation at school today with a student about exactly this. It is a kid with a dream to create. And I got to talk to this kid on it's so funny, right? Like if you're a teacher, depending on what kind of teacher you are, but I believe that you look, I don't say physically I'm young, I'm falling apart, let's be honest. But there's something up here where, I mean, my wife uses it as a joke that like when I taught fourth grade, I was a 10-year-old idiot boy. And now I'm just a 14-year-old idiot boy because I teach eighth graders, right? Like there's something that doesn't necessarily mature. And that might be looked at as a negative in a lot of society. But when I'm talking to this kid, even though I didn't follow my dream until middle age, I got to talk to them today only a couple years ahead of where they would be in starting their thing, and talk to them like it was like a 16-year-old talking to a 14-year-old. You know what I mean? Because that's where like if you look at hey, this kid is at this starting point with this idea and this much and this dream. I'm only a couple years removed from that, right? And because I'm an immature little babbling idiot, because it's hard to grow up when you spend most of your time with somebody a certain age and year after year after year. Yeah. You know, it's just kind of a very unique experience.
Right.
That here I am at this point in my life, but still kind of living this dream of the first timer, you know? I don't know. It's weird.
You know, and it's, we talked, I mean, like when I heard your story, that's kind of what triggered me, because I was writing a novel and I just said, I'm done with this. It just sat in my saved folder. What I think it was like 25,000 words, I think I typed or something like that.
I remember you telling me that.
I just let it go. And then it just sparked something and then I read, because Parallels, what really started it is because I read him in myself. I'm reading it like this is talking directly to me. Well, and I had no choice at that point but sit down and write. And it really changed something in me. And you know, it's when you have the ability to do that with writing, with a story, it speaks to not necessarily your ability, but how much you care about the property, because it bleeds through in the work.
And that's got to be what it is, because I've got imposter syndrome as much as anybody does, right? So like you would never be able to catch me talking about some talent I have to put something on a page, because I don't believe that. But I'm not going to argue with you that like if I feel something really passionately, that's going to bleed through, and maybe that's where that comes from. But let's say this, and then we'll throw out a couple more things, and then I got to get to bed, because guess what? There's 180 teenagers waiting for me in a few hours from now. But like, I really believe you should make what you're going to make. And I think you and I have had this conversation on the show before. And what I'm going to say next I will credit it. It was put in my mind by Neil Gaiman, but I've turned it into my version of that for anybody who asks. And it's like, how do you make a comic? Well, you make it. And it sounds trite on the first level, but it's not, because what he means and what I mean by that is, if you make it, it now exists. Okay. At whatever level it exists, it now exists in the world. And
yes,
I can't promise you it'll be good. I can't promise you that it will go anywhere. But what I can promise you is that if you don't make it, nothing will happen.
Yes.
Right. And once it exists in the world, there is potential and there is forward momentum. And that's always the hardest thing. And then I did want to say this too, because of what you were talking about. So sales are nice. Awards are very nice. As much as I live in fear of a pedantic nerd calling me out on getting a detail in the background in 1943 wrong, the thing that has meant most to me along this entire journey is when one individual, one like you, or like maybe the kid I talked to today, says, you did a thing and it meant something to me in this way. It inspired me to A. Or like, I think you and I have had this conversation about like the people who reached out to me as Parallel was building momentum and were like the mental health aspect of it got me to seek help. There's nothing that there is no amount of sales. There's no amount of awards. There's no amount of followers on Instagram that can compare to the one person who takes something from it. Because guess what? I am now on the other side of an equation that I've been living for decades, right? Because there are the creators and the people who I look up to and looked at as more than human because they're the creators of the content that changed my life, right? And the fact that there might be people in the world that I'm now that person for them, it's mind-blowing. And I'm going to, and I have been, and I will continue to tread very lightly on that, right? My interaction with you online, in an interview, at a con, I'm aware that because I've been on the other side of negative interactions too with people that I looked up. Like I don't plan on making that same mistake. Like that, I think it's a pretty heavy responsibility.
Yeah.
I think there's creators who live the life and believe the thing of once the art is created and it's put out in the world, it has nothing to do with them anymore. And I'm not going to crap on that. I get that. And there's a lot of creators who believe that I respect, but it's not the way I'm living it. Right.
Right.
Like it's almost like this living thing that's still out there. And if it's changing you, I feel that I have a responsibility to respond to that and be responsible for being the person who put that out in the world and you reacted that way. I don't know. Some of this I'm just kind of thinking out loud right now and putting it into words for the first time. But I think that's
so
something I believe.
I think it's also partly because of who you work with. Like people like Garrett and people like Dr. Christie who are just
who are
so
very
amazing
who are very good at their jobs.
Oh, amazing. But I mean, when you're talking about the, like Garrett, I said this on the podcast. He yelled at me at MegaCon 2 years ago because I tried to pay him for his signature. Like to the point where security looked over and was like, do we have to remove him? He's like, no, it's fine. He just tried to pay me. It's okay. Like there are artists who are far less and far more powerful and influential or whatever you want to call it than him that will be like, you want a free signature? No, it's $25 or get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
and that in my understanding, and I'm not somebody who is like on the con circuit, in all year, every year, right? I've got like a massive break between the last run and the thing that I'm doing right now to promote Parallel Special Edition. My understanding is that that's a trend that's increasing too, right? The paid signature thing. And
oh yeah, every single person, like literally, at MegaCon, the only free signatures were ones that were with like a specific like signing or auction house that paid them to do it. So you got like 3 free signatures because the artist was already paid by whatever company it was. But for the most part, 5, 10, 15, 20, I mean, $30, $40 for signatures. Like if you wanted like 2-tone signatures, it's even more. Like It's pretty crazy.
I'm wondering if that is, and I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble for this because I don't know because I'm not, like you've probably noticed, I'm in the industry. I am not entrenched in it. It is not,
right.
Like I said, in a few minutes I need to go because I've
got work in the morning.
Yeah, we've got outsiders. We got the outsiders to talk about tomorrow and work on that. Like that's where my mind is on more days than not, right? But like I'm wondering how much this has to do with the fact that running parallel to creators at cons are B, C, and D list celebrities at cons who the norm for a while now has been the $150 picture and signature or whatever it is, or the $40 signature. And like that's going on literally a row away from you. Here you
well,
to sell the $5 copy of your book. And you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't know.
So I can see that, but like there are like someone like Kyle Willis, who I'm good friends with. He never charges for signatures or COAs. You know what I mean? Like, and he's a fantastic artist, and he's got all these stuff. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that he could easily charge for, but he doesn't because his thoughts are: you want my work, you can have the signature for free.
Yeah.
Like, what am I charging you for? You know what I mean? Like, and I joke, like, if I ever become like famous or whatever, start going to these cons and start signing stuff, I'm going to charge you $1 only because I'm going to need a stiff drink by the end of the night because my hand's going to hurt so bad. Only reason. I just want y'all to pay for my drink that night. That's all.
Yeah. I'm a public school teacher, so I'm a union guy. So like, if it ever became like a real thing, I'm not going to say never, but it is certainly not my intention to ever charge for a signature. I never have once, and I don't plan on it at any time in the near future at all. I mean, I'm doing a free comic book day signing on Saturday in a couple of days. I'm not going to get out of here. I'm not charging for signatures. Absolutely not. Yeah. Cool.
Well, Jason, I thank you for coming on again. You always have a home on Nerd Swing and a Movie podcast. I look forward to being able to report that you hit the 100% and soaring through it like Superman through all of the plot armor he has. But free cigs, or you bring the drink. Oh my God, K-pop, that's now going to be my thing. I love you. But thank you so much for listening. Make sure you go check out the Kickstarter. It'll be in the description here. Or you can just go on Kickstarter.com and just type in Jane American and it's going to show up. Jason, it's always a pleasure. And I, look forward to seeing what else we can get done in the future.
That's right, man. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Until next time, this is Nerd Tween signing out.